start this off, let's play a little game. I'm going to give you a list of fears, and I want you to raise your hand if you think it's real, or keep your hands down if you think I've made it up. Ready? Let's start. Allophobia, a fear of flutes. All right, no one trusts me. Ergophobia, a fear of work. Really, no one trusts me. And finally, hydrophobia, a fear of water. All right, ready to know which ones are real? The answer is all of them. No, really, every fear I just listed is real. And if you don't believe me, feel free to look it up. People around the world are genuinely afraid of flutes. And in theory, anything around you could become a fear. The way I see it, fear is the most interesting emotion in the human mind. Now, we're all familiar with the similar polar opposites, anger and calm, joy and sadness. But according to research published by the University of West Alabama, human psychology has 8 basic emotions: joy, trust, anticipation, anger, disgust, sadness, surprise, and, you guessed it, fear. Now, the other 7 emotions aren't that difficult to unpack. You might feel angry when you feel an injustice has happened to you or someone you know. Or perhaps you feel joy when you're on your way to work and don't hit a single red light. But fear is one of the most diverse emotions there is, because while you can choose not to be happy around others and angry around some, fear is involuntary. Your body will naturally and automatically react to whatever you're afraid of. It's a survival instinct. The psychology of fear is a topic that takes 5 to 7 years to get a PhD and a proper understanding of. Granted, I only have a few minutes, but I'll do my best to paraphrase. Firstly, we need a firm understanding of what fear is. Uniquely enough, unlike other emotions, there is no fear circuit in our brains, unlike the feeling of happiness or pleasure, which we receive through dopamine. Fear is merely a defense circuit, telling the mind and body that something around you will be or currently is dangerous and will bring harm to you. It's a defensive mechanism. Be honest, how many of you were scared of spiders as a kid or just creeped out by them? Well, if I asked you to tell me the exact date and time you became scared of spiders, you probably wouldn't be able to answer. You might just believe you were born with it or it's always been around. But that isn't true. According to a study conducted in 1960 by psychologists Eleanor J. Gibson and Richard D. Walker at Cornell University, the human mind is only born with 2 natural fears: the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling from great heights. That means that every other fear you have or have had was acquired later in your life throughout an experience. Now, you might be asking, what can that mean? I know a guy who knows a guy who's vividly afraid of snakes, but he lives in Hawaii, and there are no dangerous or poisonous snakes there. How could he be afraid of that? Well, perhaps he's never actually seen a dangerous snake, but there may have been plenty of references as he was growing up that made him believe that snakes equaled danger. Almost every cartoon I watched as a child had me believe snakes were a dangerous killing force that could kill you in one bite. And spiders have always been a sign of danger in horror movies. So people can be afraid of things that can kill them. That seems pretty fair. Being afraid of a wolf or lion is totally natural, seeing as they were once predators. Narrowed down, anything that can cause death we are afraid of. But what about fears that don't cause immediate danger? Most people feel nervousness about going up on a stage and speaking to hundreds or thousands of people at a time. After all, anxiety is simply another form of fear. You knowing you're going to be going somewhere or doing something that makes you feel you could be in danger. But public speaking doesn't bring physical harm. I didn't come up on this stage thinking that if I didn't give the best TED Talk you've ever heard, I'd be dead meat. But when in doubt about the psychology of fear, we must fall back on the discovery I said earlier. You are only born with 2 natural fears, and every other fear you have had has been added on through life experiences. For this question, let's break down the fear of public speaking, professionally known as glossophobia. A moment ago, I said that people used to fear things that would be able to kill them. But nowadays, I think it's pretty fair to say that we here in the United States and most countries don't have to worry about wild animals eating us on a daily basis. It'd be pretty unexpected to walk down the street and see a person getting attacked by a tiger. So, as Dr. Theos Sousaidis from the Icahn School of Medicine states in his article with Psychology Today, the fear often arises when people overestimate the stakes of communicating their ideas in front of others, often viewing the speaking event as a potential threat to their credibility, image, and chance to reach an audience. In summary, our daily fears have evolved from wanting to protect our lives, wanting to protect more common things, such as public image, reputation, and the crowd's opinions of us. These are not things that directly relate to us surviving or living, but they are important to us in a time where your social image is almost everything. And not to mention, many people only add to this fear, if not start it, by creating scenarios in their minds. So I spent all this time explaining what fears are and how they're made. But how can you solve a fear? Well, the answer to that is actually pretty simple. Face it. Whatever you're terrified of doing, do it. Well, I'm going to give you a pretty fair example. As a kid, as Ruby said, I was terrified of the dark. My active childhood imagination always led me to believe that there was something in my bedroom closet or underneath my bed waiting to snap me up. And so, my older sister, fed up with my fanatical obsession with keeping our hallway lights on, devised a plan that I'm extremely grateful for now. Trapping me in our basement and turning off the lights. Now, our basement is one large area underneath our living room. It has no windows in the largest part of the room and is entirely illuminated by lights. So when those lights are off, it is an inky, pitch blackness. You can't see anything or know which direction the door to escape is in. I know, it sounds harsh, but the truth is that was what I needed. After I realized that there were no killer clowns in my basement waiting to take me away, I realized the fear in my mind was simply that, in my mind. Now, that's really just one method of solving fears. If you're afraid of heights, I'm not saying you have to go skydiving tomorrow. Sometimes it isn't as easy as just doing it. So instead of saying do it with an exclamation mark and several searches of skyscrapers to bungee jump off of, say do it in a more calm, reasonable manner. And thankfully, there is a more thoughtful 3-step process to solving your fear. Firstly, identify your fear. Some phobias are easy to classify, hence making them easier to avoid. If snakes make you nervous, then you're more likely to stay away from them. But, going back to the fear of flutes I mentioned earlier, if you're entered an orchestra concert and suddenly felt terrified by a high-pitched shrill noise, it might be hard to understand what you were afraid of at the time. Identifying what your fear is and whether it be a hatred for crowds or meeting new people can help you understand what steps you need to take to solve it. Secondly, understand your fear. So you've been able to pinpoint what your fear is. Now it's time for your brain to take your phobia and sort it between physical threats and non-physical threats, something that can be an effect on your social life. For example, the fear of public speaking. Presenting yourself in front of an audience will not kill or harm you. At least I should hope it wouldn't. But it could become a disability in your communication skills with coworkers and friends if you are afraid of doing so. Understanding what your fear is, and where it lies, and how it affects you now will allow you to enter the final step, which is to work on it. The difference between this step and the first method of abruptly confronting your fear is the pace. Now, you finally reach the climax of your fear recovery, and once you slowly expose yourself to your phobia, you know what your fear is, you know it cannot hurt you, which takes the power away from the phobia. And that, essentially, is the same with all fears. If you can take your fear and understand that it cannot and will not harm you, it loses all power over you and will soon become a distant thought. After all, what doesn't kill you will make you stronger. Thank you for your time.